Hello and welcome to my channel. Before moving on, hit the like button and subscribe and press the bell icon and comment your country. When a waitress served Barron Trump at a quiet cafe, she thought it was just another routine shift. She never imagined that what he left behind, a heartfelt note and an unbelievable tip, would bring her to tears and ignite conversations across the nation. The cozy cafe was filled with the familiar aroma of freshly brewed espresso and the sweet scent of pastries. That afternoon, the usual lull seemed to stretch endlessly. The hum of customer chatter had faded into a mere whisper, leaving the space unusually quiet. For Dinah, the waitress, it felt like the day was dragging on forever. Every second ticked by painfully slowly. The clinks of cutlery against plates were a constant reminder of her exhaustion after hours of being on her feet. As she wiped down the last table by the window, Dinah couldn't resist checking her phone. Just one more hour to go. The stress of looming bills weighed heavily on her mind. Rent was due in 2 days, and her phone bill remained unpaid. The tips that day were disheartening, mostly loose change carelessly tossed onto tables by distracted patrons glued to their phones. She exhaled deeply, pulling her hair into a tighter ponytail, her body on autopilot as she grabbed her order pad. Her manager, a woman with kind but weary eyes, gave her a glance that silently encouraged, "You're almost there." But Dinah was already too drained to feel motivated. The small bell above the cafe door jingled suddenly, breaking her focus. Startled, Dinah turned to see a young man entering the cafe. He was tall, with a lean frame, wearing a simple yet elegant outfit that made him look effortlessly refined. Behind him trailed 2 men who blended into the background so well that, at first glance, they seemed unnoticeable. Their sharp, observant gazes scanned every corner of the room. The cafe wasn't the sort of place that attracted high-profile visitors. It was an unassuming spot, far removed from the glitz of celebrity hangouts. Seeing someone arrive with what appeared to be security detail was completely out of the ordinary. Dinah froze for a moment, her pen hovering above her pad as the realization struck her. This wasn't just anyone. Barron Trump. Her heart raced as recognition dawned. His face, which she'd seen on countless news channels, was unmistakable. Son of a former president, his presence carried an undeniable aura. But this wasn't the time to lose her composure. Dinah reminded herself, he's just another customer. With a professional smile, she approached his table in the far corner. "Good afternoon," she greeted, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Can I get you something to start?" Barron looked up, and for a moment Dinah felt her breath catch. His face was striking, not just for its symmetry, but for the quiet, calm demeanor it carried. There was something familiar yet humbling about him. His expression was reserved, almost guarded, but his politeness was undeniable. "I'll just have a cappuccino," he replied softly, his voice gentle. "And maybe one of those croissants." "Absolutely," Dinah replied, scribbling down the order. "Anything else?" He shook his head. "That'll be perfect, thank you." His tone wasn't just polite. It was warm, even kind. Dinah couldn't put her finger on it, but there was something deeply genuine in his voice. As she turned back toward the counter, she couldn't shake the peculiar feeling in her chest. Was it nerves, exhaustion, or perhaps something about this moment felt different? She began preparing his coffee, the hiss of the steam from the cappuccino machine filling the quiet cafe. She focused on her movements, keeping them steady and deliberate, anything to distract herself from the strange energy coursing through her. "Why am I like this?" she thought. "It's just a cappuccino for a customer, even if that customer is Barron Trump." From the corner of her eye, she noticed him sitting quietly, his posture relaxed yet composed. Unlike other patrons, he wasn't glued to his phone or typing away on a laptop. Instead, he gazed out the window, seemingly lost in thought. He occasionally took small sips of water from the glass she'd brought earlier, his movements calm and unhurried. When the cappuccino and croissant were ready, Dinah took a deep breath and approached his table. Carefully balancing the tray, she placed the items in front of him with a practiced ease. "Here you go," she said, her voice steady. Barron looked up, offering a faint but sincere smile. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she replied, maintaining her polite tone. "Let me know if you need anything else." As Dinah turned to walk away, she felt his eyes linger on her, though they weren't intrusive or uncomfortable. Her heart fluttered again, an unfamiliar feeling she couldn't quite explain. Minutes passed, and Dinah busied herself with her usual tasks, clearing tables, refilling sugar containers, and tidying up the café. The faint hum of background music from the speakers was the only sound accompanying her as the room grew quieter. Yet there was a strange weight in the air, an almost invisible presence that pressed on her, urging her to pay attention. Out of the corner of her eye, Dinah noticed Barron reach into his pocket, pulling out a pen. He leaned over the receipt on the table, writing something quickly, almost as though he didn't want anyone to notice. With deliberate care, he folded the paper and tucked it neatly beneath his empty coffee cup. Then, rising from his seat, he adjusted his coat and gathered his phone. Dinah watched him for a moment, curiosity sparking in her chest, before forcing herself to return to her work. As he approached the exit, she instinctively called out, "Thank you for coming." Barron turned slightly, offering her a small, sincere smile. "Have a good day." Those words seemed to echo longer than they should have. Dinah stood motionless in the middle of the cafe, her eyes following him as he exited with his quiet security detail trailing behind. The bell above the door gave one last soft chime, and then the cafe was silent again. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before walking over to clear his table. The cappuccino cup sat empty, a faint foam residue clinging to the rim. The croissant plate was bare, save for a few crumbs. But then her eyes landed on the folded receipt beneath the cup. Dinah reached for it hesitantly, her heart beating faster as she picked it up. Her first thought was simple. Maybe it was just a generous tip. It wasn't uncommon for wealthier customers to leave larger sums as a way to express gratitude or, more often, as an afterthought. But as she unfolded the paper, her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened. At the bottom of the receipt, below the total, was a number, a tip so large it made her stomach flip. 4 digits stared back at her. But it wasn't just the money. Above the tip was a handwritten note in neat, deliberate handwriting. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Dinah's hands trembled as she reread the note, letting each word sink in. Her vision blurred with hot tears, the weight of the words hitting her harder than anything else. She sank into the chair across from where Barron had sat, her knees too weak to hold her up. The note, the tip. It wasn't about the money, it was about the message. In those few lines, he'd seen her, truly seen her. Empathy, understanding, and kindness, things she hadn't felt in so long, were laid out on this simple slip of paper. For the first time in what felt like forever, Dinah didn't feel invisible. As the tears streamed down her cheeks, she clutched the note tightly in her hands, feeling its weight, its significance. The world outside the cafe seemed to fade away. Barron Trump, someone she'd never expected to cross paths with, had left her something more than just a tip. He'd left her hope. Dinah was still sitting in the chair, the folded receipt in her trembling hands, when the sound of the cafe door opening jolted her back to reality. She quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand and slipped the note into the pocket of her apron. Her manager, a woman who had seen countless shifts and more than her share of weary employees, approached with a concerned look. "You okay?" her manager asked, her voice softer than usual. What happened? Dinah hesitated, her mind racing for the right words. I... I'm fine, she managed to say, though her voice cracked slightly. It's just a really generous tip. Her manager raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Generous enough to make you cry? Dinah nodded, letting out a shaky laugh as she pulled the folded receipt from her pocket and handed it over. Her manager unfolded it, her eyes scanning the numbers and the note. A low whistle escaped her lips. No way. Who left this? The guy at the corner table, Dinah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. That was Barron Trump. Her manager blinked, her mouth opening and closing as though searching for the right words. The Barron Trump? Are you serious? Yeah, Dinah said, her voice steadier now. She pulled the note out again, her fingers gripping it as though it were a lifeline. But it wasn't just the money. It's what he wrote. She handed the note over carefully, as though it might crumble in her hands. Her manager read it slowly, her expression softening in a way Dinah had never seen before. Wow, her manager finally said, handing the note back with a reverence that matched Dinah's. That's really something. It really is, Dinah agreed, folding the note again with the same care as if it were a priceless treasure. I don't even know why he wrote it. I didn't do anything special. Her manager studied her for a long moment, her gaze thoughtful. Sometimes people just know, she said. They can see what you're going through even when you think you're hiding it. You're here every day, working your tail off, always kind to customers, even the ones who don't deserve it. Maybe he saw that. Dinah swallowed hard, her eyes welling up again. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. For months, she had been pushing through life, treading water just to stay afloat, working double shifts to pay rent, skipping meals to save for her mother's prescriptions. She had held on to kindness because it was the only part of herself she wouldn't let the world take away. And somehow, Barron had seen that. As the minutes passed, a quiet buzz filled the café. Whispers started spreading among her co-workers. A few pointed toward the corner table, their voices hushed but filled with excitement. It didn't take long before one of the baristas, a bubbly young woman with wide eyes, approached Dinah. You served him, didn't you? The barista asked, her voice brimming with disbelief and awe. What did he say? Was he nice? Dinah smiled faintly, still clutching the note in her apron pocket. Yeah, he was really nice. Man, I would have freaked out, the barista said with a laugh. That's so crazy. Dinah didn't offer any more details. She didn't want to share the note or the tip. Not yet. It felt too personal, too sacred to explain to someone else. For now, it was hers alone. The rest of her shift passed in a haze. Every task felt a little lighter, every interaction a little easier. By the time Dinah untied her apron and prepared to leave, the folded note was still safely tucked away in her pocket. As she made her way to the subway station, she pulled out the receipt again, her eyes lingering on the words, "Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." She whispered the sentence to herself, as if saying it aloud could make it even more real. He didn't have to write that, she thought. He didn't have to care. And yet, he did. Dinah arrived home later that evening, her steps slower than usual as her thoughts raced. Her small apartment was quiet except for the muffled hum of the television from the living room. She placed her bag down and walked in to find her mother sitting in her recliner, a blanket draped over her lap. The sound from the TV caught Dinah's attention immediately. A familiar headline flashed on the screen. Barron Trump's act of kindness, a note that's touched the nation. Dinah froze in the doorway, her heart pounding. The screen displayed a blurred photo of the note and tip, accompanied by the headline. Her mother turned to her, coughing lightly. "That's you, isn't it?" her mother asked, her voice filled with both curiosity and pride. Dinah let out a sigh, nodding as she dropped into the chair next to her. "Yeah, Mom, That's me." Her mother's eyes softened, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's a good thing, you know. People need stories like this right now." "I didn't ask for it," Dinah muttered, folding her arms. "I didn't want it to be a big deal." "Sometimes the best things find you when you're not looking for them," her mom replied gently. She reached over, squeezing Dinah's hand. "What he wrote, that was special. And people are talking about it because they need to believe there's still kindness in the world. You're part of that now." Dinah felt tears sting her eyes again, but she blinked them away. "It just feels too big for me, Mom. Like I don't deserve it." Her mother shook her head firmly. "Don't say that. You work so hard every day. You've kept us going when things got tough. And through it all, you've stayed kind. That's who you are, Dinah. Someone saw that, and they reminded you that you matter." Her mother's words settled in Dinah's heart, warming her in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She smiled faintly, pulling the note from her pocket and smoothing out its creases. It still felt surreal, like a dream she hadn't quite woken up from. The next morning, Dinah's phone buzzed incessantly on her nightstand, pulling her from sleep. She groggily reached for it, squinting at the flood of notifications on her screen. Messages from co-workers, friends, and even distant acquaintances piled up, most of them containing links or screenshots of articles. "Dinah, is this you? You're trending everywhere. This is amazing. What are you going to do?" With a groan, she sat up and opened one of the links. Her face turned pale as she scrolled through a news article recounting the story of Barron Trump's visit to the café. The photo of the note, with her name blurred out, was splashed across the page. The story had gone viral overnight. Social media was ablaze with reactions. "This is the kind of story we need more of. Barron Trump just proved that kindness isn't dead. Who is this waitress? She deserves the world." Dinah felt her chest tighten as she flipped to her social media accounts. The story was everywhere. Hundreds of comments debated her life, her struggles, her character, all without knowing anything about her. Her privacy, it seemed, had vanished overnight. She dropped her phone onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "How did this happen?" she thought. "What do I do now?" Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from her manager. Dinah hesitated before answering. "Morning," her manager said, her voice cautious. "I'm guessing you've seen it by now?" "Yeah," Dinah replied, her voice strained. "It's everywhere." "Well, the cafe's already getting calls from reporters," her manager continued. "And there's something else. A morning show wants to interview you. They've been asking if you'd be willing to talk about the note." Dinah froze. "A morning show, like on TV?" "Yep. Big platform. They think it's an inspiring story," her manager said. "It's up to you, though. No pressure." Dinah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She didn't want the attention, but a part of her knew this was bigger than just her. Maybe sharing the story would help others see the power of small acts of kindness. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, ending the call. Dinah spent the rest of the day wrestling with her decision. The idea of sitting in front of a camera, sharing such a personal moment with the world, felt overwhelming. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the significance of the note. It wasn't just about her, it was about the kindness it represented and the ripple effect it had already created. That evening, as she sat at the small table in her apartment, the note unfolded in front of her, she made her choice. Picking up her phone, she dialed her manager. "Tell the morning show I'll do it," Dinah said, her voice steady but nervous. "But I'm not talking about the money. I just want to talk about the note, about kindness. That's what matters." Her manager's voice brightened. "I think that's a great decision. I'll set it up and send you the details." The day of the interview arrived faster than Dinah expected. As she sat in the green room, her heart pounded in her chest. The producers had been kind and welcoming, but the thought of speaking to an audience so large still made her palms sweat. She kept the note tucked safely in her pocket, its presence a comforting reminder of why she was there. Finally, she was guided onto the set. The host greeted her warmly, their tone reassuring as they introduced her to the audience. Today we have a story that has touched hearts across the nation. Dinah, a waitress at a small café, experienced an extraordinary moment of kindness when Barron Trump left her a note that quickly went viral. Dinah, thank you for being here. Dinah smiled nervously. Thank you for having me. The host leaned forward, their voice gentle. So, let's start at the beginning. What went through your mind when you first read the note? Dinah took a deep breath. Honestly, I was shocked. It caught me off guard. It wasn't about the money, it was the words he wrote. I've been going through a tough time, and seeing those words, it felt like someone truly understood what I was going through. The host nodded, their expression thoughtful. The note said, "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." What do you think he meant by that? Dinah glanced at the camera, her voice steady despite her nerves. I think he meant that no matter who you are, everyone has struggles. His family has been in the public eye, but they've faced challenges too. That note reminded me, and I think everyone who's read it, that even in the hardest times, kindness and hope can make a difference. The audience was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over the room. The host smiled warmly. That's such a powerful message. If Barron Trump is watching, is there anything you'd like to say to him? Dinah's voice wavered slightly, but she smiled. Just thank you. Not for the money, but for seeing me. For reminding me to hold on to hope. You made a difference in my life, and I hope your message inspires others to do the same. The interview aired later that day, and Dinah refused to check her phone as it played. Instead, she focused on the note's true purpose, to spark something good. She returned to work the next day, tying her apron a little tighter and feeling a little lighter on her feet. The cafe was bustling, the energy in the room more positive than she'd ever felt. Customers smiled at her warmly, some leaving kind notes on napkins, others tipping a little extra or simply expressing their gratitude. One note left behind on a small slip of paper stood out to her. You're inspiring more people than you know. Thank you for reminding us that kindness still matters. Dinah slipped the note into her pocket, alongside Barron's, the weight of both anchoring her to the idea that even in the hardest times, small acts of kindness could create waves. For the first time in a long time, she felt like the world wasn't such a lonely place. As the days went by, Dinah's story continued to spread. The cafe remained busier than ever, with customers coming in not just for the coffee, but to meet the waitress who had touched so many hearts. Strangers would stop her with kind words, some even leaving notes of encouragement or sharing their own stories of struggle and hope. One afternoon, during a short lull between customers, Dinah sat by the counter, sorting receipts and wiping down menus. Her manager walked over, holding a small envelope. "This came for you," she said, placing the envelope on the counter. "No return address, but it looks important." Dinah frowned slightly as she picked up the envelope. The paper felt expensive, heavier than the usual junk mail she was used to. Carefully, she slid her finger under the flap and pulled out a folded piece of stationery. Her breath hitched when she saw the signature at the bottom, before even reading the words. It was from Barron Trump. "Dear Dinah, I wanted to take a moment to personally thank you for the kindness you've shown and the strength you've demonstrated. When I left that note, I hoped it might brighten your day or offer a small sense of encouragement. I never expected it to resonate with so many people the way it has." Seeing how your story has inspired others reminds me of something my family has always believed, that even the smallest gestures can have a profound impact. You've reminded me that kindness and hard work are noticed, even when it doesn't always feel like it. I hope the attention your story has brought helps to lift you up in some way, just as your dedication has lifted others. Please know that you are seen, appreciated, and valued far beyond what words can express. With gratitude, Barron Trump. Dinah read the letter twice, then a third time, her heart swelling with emotion. She folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope, holding it to her chest as she took a moment to process. The note wasn't just a kind gesture, it was a reminder that the ripple effect of one small act could reach farther than anyone imagined. Her manager gave her a knowing smile. "That's something you're going to keep forever, isn't it?" Dinah nodded, her voice too thick with emotion to speak. Over the weeks, the initial media frenzy began to die down, but the impact of the story lingered. Dinah noticed subtle changes in the café. Customers were kinder, more patient, and more generous. Regulars began tipping more consistently, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to show appreciation for her and her co-workers. One evening, as Dinah was cleaning up after closing, a mother and her young daughter walked into the cafe. The little girl clutched a folded piece of paper in her hands. Dinah turned to greet them, her exhaustion fading at the sight of the child's shy smile. "Hi there," Dinah said gently. "What can I do for you?" The mother smiled warmly. "My daughter wanted to meet you. She heard about your story, and she wrote you something." The little girl stepped forward, holding out the paper with both hands. Dinah crouched down to accept it. "Thank you, sweetie. What's your name?" "Lila," the girl whispered, her cheeks turning pink. Dinah unfolded the note and read it aloud. "Dear Dinah, you're my hero because you are kind and you make people happy. I hope one day I can be like you. Love, Lila." Tears filled Dinah's eyes as she looked back at the little girl. "This is the sweetest thing I've ever received. Thank you, Lila. You've just made my whole day." The girl beamed and her mother nodded appreciatively. "You're making a difference, Dinah, more than you know." That night, as Dinah lay in bed, she reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The note from Barron, the encouragement from strangers, the ripple effect of kindness. It all reminded her that the world wasn't as cold or indifferent as it sometimes seemed. Small acts of kindness, whether a heartfelt note or a child's drawing, carried immense power to heal and inspire. She reached for her wallet and pulled out Barron's note, reading the words once more. "Brighter days are coming." For the first time in years, she truly believed it. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe and hit the like button. Comment your favorite part in the video.